When I was early on in the gallery business, this is back in the 1970s, an artist called me one day, wanted to know if I'd like to take a look at his artwork. I said, sure, come on. So we made an appointment. He came over and he began to show me his work, which was he did watercolor paintings of duck decoys. It's kind of a unique subject matter. And it was almost all that he did. He just loved duck decoys. He had a large collection of them. And he did a lot of paintings of these duck decoys. And then he made prints of the decoys. And then he would take it to shows and stuff like that. So anyway, he came to me and wanted to show his work in my gallery. And after looking at his portfolio of work, I said, explain to me what you're doing. So he told me that, he was part of the Sunshine Arts Group. So anyway, he was telling me he just had finished up a little show in St. Petersburg, which is right across the bay um, from Tampa, and he was in one of these sidewalk art shows in St. Petersburg. Well, I said, well, tell me about it. So he began to show me about it and what he was doing. He sold these prints, and what he did was he did not have a numbered edition. He made these lithographs of these watercolors of these duck decoys. Anyway, from there, he would go to the shows and he wouldn't show the original watercolors. He would show these prints. And he had several dozen of them. So there was a wide variety of looks that he made and stuff. And, they were very competently done. They weren't what I would call major art, but, they were nicely done, very colorful. And he was doing them in a color palette that was in vogue at the time, this kind of a country blue and the country rose kind of colors. And, and the prints, they sold very well. So we sat down and I said, okay, you want to show some of your work in my gallery? I said, um, tell me about why you want to do this. He said, well, I want to make more of a living with my artwork. And he was an older gentleman. He wanted to get ready to retire. And I said, okay, well, let's just take a look at what you're doing. So he started telling me of all the traveling he did and showing in all these shows, everywhere from California all through the South, in New Mexico and Arizona, through Texas, and then Mississippi and Missouri, and right on across through southern Georgia and into Florida. And he lived in St. Petersburg, so it was real convenient for him to do the shows around Central Florida and South Florida. And I said, okay, how many of these do you sell? And I forget the exact number that he told me, but he was selling about 67 to $75,000 worth of these prints every year. I said, wow, he said, yeah. I said, how much of that is profit? And he said, well, I do these lithographs that I can do two or three on a single sheet of paper, and I have a lithographic company that I work with, and he takes the pictures of them and sets up all the lighting, and he boom 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 does all that. And he said it costs me right now about $1,000 per edition. I said, how many editions do you have? And he told me it was somewhere in the 40 or 50 editions. I said, okay, well, you just told me you only had like 25 or 30 prints to sell. And he said, yeah, I've sold out all of the ones that I did before that. And I said, well, many does that mean? He said, well, the first one sold out, I sold about 1,000. And the second I sold out was about, I think he said 2,000, 2,500, something like that. I said, now what are you getting for each one of these? He said, well, for a small one, I get $20, and for a little bit larger one, I get, maybe $40 or $50. So we began to calculate what he was actually making. And after all, I said, what do you file taxes on every year? He said, well, I file taxes on about 40 I think he said 42,000. And I said, now out of that, what is your deduction? He said, well, there are travel expenses and my office expenses at the house and blah, blah, blah. And I name all these things. And it turns out his real value income, in other words, that the money that was paying for his home as well as studio, which were basically combined into one. He had a kitchen and he could claim almost 100% of his cost of his home, which he owned. And he was, he was taking that out of his net income. Well, when he boiled it all down to it, he was making in excess of $50,000 a year. And this was just doing these sidewalk art shows, and he loved to travel, so he traveled. He knew a lot of people. He had lots of friends that he met along the way. Um, the artists, they were all in the same shows. They get to know each other, blah blah. And, I mean, it was really a wonderful life that he was living. And I said, "Well, why would you want to get tied down to a gallery?" He says, "I don't know. It just sounds like a good idea to sell out of a gallery." I said, "Let me give you a piece of advice. Drop the idea of a gallery." I said, "You're making 10 times the amount of money that most galleries that sell out of galleries make." And he said, "Really?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "Let me show you." So I showed him some of our work that I was selling for artists. And they were competent work, and I would regularly make sales for them. But, they were getting maybe $500 for a work, but their net they're getting out of that is 250 after I took commission, plus expenses and stuff they had. They were making about 250, maybe $300 per drawing or per painting, whatever it was. And when you got right down to it, they were making a living similar to his, but they were committed to consigning works of art to an art gallery. And when you get right down to it, it was a much harder life for them. I mean, they got to do what they love to do. They love to, they love to paint or draw or do sculpting, whatever it was. And they left all the sales up to the galleries, but it really wasn't what you would call a great living. They could have been doing a lot better. And I'm going to show you a few ways that artists do a lot better than just showing in an art gallery. Now, art galleries are great. Now, if you happen to be picked up by a very active or a major gallery in New York City, and you're doing that conceptual or kind of work that is very popular these days, well, sure, a guy can sell paintings for hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars at a major gallery in New York City. But the average artist that sells out of the average gallery is lucky to make 20,000 a year. I'll be perfectly honest, even these days. $20,000 a year out of one gallery is a good living for an artist. Now, the artist has the option of selling out of several galleries. And if he does competent work, he should be able to sell $20,000 to $30,000 worth of artwork out of each gallery. If he is selling out of 5 galleries and doing $20,000 worth of business out of each gallery, then his major sales, his total of his sales is going to be in the neighborhood of $100,000. The gallery is going to take a very generous gallery is going to take 1/3 commission. Now, you really don't see that hardly anymore. A good gallery will take 40 to 50%, and these days, 50% is really the norm for a gallery. And so, if you're selling $100,000 worth of work out of your galleries, then you're getting back half that, $50,000, which is a fairly decent living today. But my artist friend that I was telling you that was making $50,000, that was in 1970s. And in the 1970s, $50,000 was a fabulous living. I mean, he had a nice motorhome he traveled all around with, even with maintenance and everything out of that. I mean, he was making a whopper living. And so that's why I told him, listen, don't worry about the galleries. You love traveling, you love doing the art, you love meeting the people, you love the sidewalk art shows, blah, blah, blah. And I said, you got a life that many artists would give just about anything to live. And and so he thanked me and he went on his way and he continued to do that. And he was an older gentleman. And the last I heard was he was still doing the sidewalk art shows. And this was about 7 or 8 years later and doing very well. And he was making an excellent living, an enjoyable living, and a satisfying living doing the sidewalk art shows. I want to tell you another sidewalk art show story that the guy knew his niche. And I met him at the Winter Park Art Festival back in 1973 or 4, somewhere in there. And he did these pen and ink, very precise drawings of birds. And they were birds in flight, and they were, birds very dramatically lit and everything. But he would take a draftsman's drawing pen, which has minuscule little tiny dots it makes, or little tiny lines. But he liked to doing the dots. And he would use various size tips for these mechanical pens. And he would do these drawings very, very precise. And he was an excellent draftsman. And he did these drawings that were, well, the biggest I saw was maybe about 18 inches or so. Most of them were 8 by 10, maybe. So they were, small size. Well, anyway, I sat in the shade just across, there's a little path through this sidewalk art show, and there was a tree there. And I sat there and I watched him with his sales presentations and was just captivated by it. Because the drawings, first place, were really, really, really good. I mean, they were fabulous drawings. And they were very saleable. And he would sell these things. He did all the lithography himself. He had a machine that would faithfully reproduce these things. And he would sell them like a 5 by 7 size, and an 8 by 10 size, and maybe 11 by 14 size. I mean, he had a real thing going. So he would have samples he had 3 tables set up, and he had his family was all there helping him. He had a couple of sons, he had a daughter, and his wife. The wife was to be the one down at the end taking the money. I'm telling you, this was a serious operation he had going. So people could buy, and he had one table where we had samples of all these things at different sizes. And they say you can get this one, and this size, this size, and this size. And you can get this one, this size, and this size, and this one, blah, 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 and blah, 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 blah. And they had a choice of these really super excellent quality drawings, and the lithography that he just did photolithographs of them. And they were exact copies of the pen and ink drawings. And so people would come by, boy, I like this one here, and boy, this one, isn't this cute? To talk to his wife. Well, how about this one? Well, I like that one too. And they could pick out 2 or 3 or 4 of these things. And they would look at these and they go, now, what size would you like them in? And they said, well, I like this one in a 5x7. I like this one in the 8x10, and blah, 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 like that. He said, okay, now, would you like these matted and framed? And they would think, well, I don't know. He said, well, let me show you what they look like matted. So he had one of his sons would take over. He said, here you go. Show these people what these drawings would look like matted. So the son would take over and he'd say, okay, this is a gray mat and this is a red mat and blah, blah, blah. You know, what this would go over a sofa that was red and this would go over a, whatever, And so the people get all enthusiastic, and they'd take these drawings and they'd find a mat that they like. And they'd say, okay, I'll take this one and this mat, and I'll take this one and this mat. And the mats were cheap, I mean, they were $4 or $5, the small ones were $3 or $4. But he was making 100% profit on every one of the mats. So he could sell them cheap. And then his wife was down there and she had these ready-made these aluminum frames that were very popular back in the day. I guess they're still popular. They're making it in a lot of colors now. And then they were either aluminum or black, and there was like a pewter. And they all went really nicely in with these little drawings. So he said, well, you can frame this thing. My mom's right here doing the framing. And so you've got $10 um, in the print, and you've got $3 in the mat, and then my mom, she can frame this for you for just maybe $15, $18. So they say, okay, so they go down there and they picked out a frame for it. Well, in the end, this couple here, I watched many of these things. This couple had 4 prints picked out. They went and got 4 mats for the 4 prints they picked out. And they went down, and the boy's mom, the artist's wife, framed them for an average of $15 to $20 each, depending on the size and which frame they liked and everything. But in the end, this one couple, they were selling, I can't remember the number, it was like 300 or $350 is what they bought 4 prints plus the mats plus the thing, and they asked them, "Do you want me to gift wrap them?" If they wanted it, they didn't want the gift wrapping, but if they wanted to gift wrap them, they would gift wrap them for them for a small fee. And would you like these shipped? Okay, well, I'm from Tallahassee, not from Winter Park, Florida, is where the Sidewalk Art Show was. Yeah, and that would save us all the hassle of having to carry them on an airplane or car or whatever we are doing. Yeah, ship them back to our house. So they would have had boxes right there, and they would put these things in boxes, and they put the foam and all the stuff in cardboard to protect them, and they had glass over them and everything, all like that. And, I mean, it was just it was no scam. It was an operation, and it was good business, is what it was. So this couple that came by and they were attracted to one print that was probably a $5 or $10 print. Ended up spending $350, I think it was. That's without the shipping. But I saw other people, they accepted the shipping option. And, people would come to these sidewalk art shows. The one in Winter Park is one of the major shows in the United States, and people would come there from all over the country. So if somebody was from New York and they were spending $350 on framed prints, then they could pay an additional 20 or $25, whatever it was, to have all these things packed up for them and shipped back to New York, and then all these things would be waiting for them when they got back home. So it's entrepreneurial thinking is what is going to see an artist out of the mindset that you got to go to a gallery and you got to sell your work through an art gallery or something like that. Wow. I just got finished going over the list of all the things and the ways that artists can market their work. And I'm telling you, I'm going to pull it up here real quick. Just hang on, bear with me for a second. That going from galleries, auctions, online resources, various things, sales through print, sales through art magazine, advertising, private studios, museums, art competitions, all sorts of things. I got a list here of 20 different things that is just barely beginning the whole idea of how to market your work. And there are lots and lots of ways to do it. So I'm going to be going over this list. I'm going to end this video here for now. It's already running 20 minutes or so. So we're going to tackle these. I'm reckoning we'll do them one at a time. Next time, I think that we will talk at least about the gallery situation and maybe go from there into the online galleries as a topic of discussion. So anyway, I want to thank you all for watching. Just stay tuned and stay alert for those opportunities that come your way, because everybody is going to see opportunities come their way. It's just a matter of taking heed of the opportunities, grabbing a hold of them, carpe diem kind of thing, and go on and earn your living. So anyway, until then, I just want to bless y'all and say thank you, and subscribe if you and like this if you like this, and we'll see you the next time. Until then, be blessed. So long.